Let's talk about the most important vocation in the entirety of the game, and it is the most important vocation not because of the powerful, how powerful the vocation is, but how important it is for you to have a vocation on your crew. The mage, of course. Everyone needs a mage. And that being said, remember that you can hire your pawns, and remember that you can hire your pawns based on skills. It's always so fun to find a proper mage, one that actually suits your tastes. You can build it yourself, and as a matter of fact, that's what I usually advise people to do, to build their own mages, and then when you're going to hire different pawns, then it doesn't really matter what kind of skills they have, because at the end of the day, you're going to be the main source of DPS. The Arisen is always going to be the main source of DPS. The pawns are going to be off DPSs. But the mage is going to be the main support of the entirety of the crew. Remember that you can look your pawns by skills. Sometimes they're going to have the combination of skills that you want, that you need, but there's kind of like remember that they can only have like 4 active skills, and that is why it's so important to build a mage properly, or to find that desired mage properly on the rift that you want to carry with you at all times. Now that is all going to be dependent on the place in time that you are in your playthrough as well, because the first 3 skills that the mages are going to have is going to be Flagration, Levine, and Freaker, and those are going to be the offensive spells. Now the mage, despite of how you build him, it doesn't really matter how you build him, he's never going to deal that much more damage. And as a matter of fact, as you level up, as you build properly your Risen and the rest of your crew, the rest of your pawns, the damage that this guy is going to have is going to be so little that it really is not going to even matter that you have a offensive spell with your mage. That is why a lot of people opt to just use the spells that we want the mage for. And I want to say that even if you can deal active damage with your mage that much, a properly built mage is going to be the main difference between dealing with an enemy in 10 minutes or dealing with the enemy in just 1 minute, because of how powerful the buffs that you're going to get with the mage. Now, that being said, we also have Spell Hold. And Spell Hold, I mean, it's kind of nice. It basically stores a spell in the staff to instantly cast it, but this is a little bit better used by an reason. Like, the pawns are not that intelligent to be using this at a discretion, so I wouldn't advise for you to use this thing. Now, the Empyrean conjures an orb of holy light, and it might sound cool, it might sound amazing, but in reality, more than anything, it's because of the light that it is going to cast on the battlefield or a cave or what have you. Not even to undead, which are weak to holy damage, that this is holy damage, are going to receive that much damage from this thing. And since you have the lanterns, then I'd say that this is quite irrelevant. Now, the Solemnity. The Solemnity is kind of nice when you're fighting against certain specific kind of monsters, like some monsters that can conjure spells, or some major bosses that can conjure spells. So that's actually quite nice as well, because some of those monsters, bosses, and what have you are very much annoying, especially when you reach the endgame, and the endgame is plagued by mages that are constantly freezing you and freezing you and freezing you. So I'd say that this is kind of a niche thing that if you actually want to have it, it's kind of nice, but it's going to be taste dependent on the Arisen. Now, Palladium and High Palladium, it's actually quite nice, because this is going to give you defense. It's not going to contribute to the overall DPS of the crew, but what it does is that it allows for you not to get knocked down. And remember that knockdown in this game is key. If you're not a fighter or a warrior with the maximum knockdown defense from the entirety of your armor, then sometimes it is actually kind of tricky, especially if you don't have like properly aggro builds in between the entirety of your crew. So yeah, like Palladium is actually quite nice. And more often than not, I have to say that I've had mages with Palladium that actually do give me something that I see on the screen that something is about to hit me, and then it suddenly doesn't, and it's just so satisfying that I thought that I was going to get knocked down on the ground, and I don't, and I can continue with the attack. So that's actually quite nice. Now we come into the top tier of the everything, and I think that these are the ones every time. Now, like, the previous things were actually kind of nice, but now the things that we're going to be speaking right here, these are the ones that should be as a must if you really want to potentialize the DPS percentage of your crew by quite literally like 5 times. You're going to kill things 5 times faster, provided that you have a mage that has these things. And that is why if your pawn is a mage, you should be using as much these things as possible. Or if you're hiring a mage from the pawn, then be sure to be looking for a collection of these spells. The affinities or the boons. We have the fire affinity that is going to give fire weapon to you. We have the ice affinity, and also we have the lightning affinity. All of them are actually quite nice, and they are going to increase the DPS of the main Arisen quite substantially. It's easy and fast to cast, and it's always going to be active on your main Arisen. It's always going to have an incantation on your Arisen, so that's actually kind of nice. It can also be used as damage, as you can see right there, but more often than not, it is going to be used to incant the Arisen. Not only is it going to give you that elemental damage, but it's going to give you the elemental debuff. Out of them, I think that just having one of them, it's actually quite amazing. I'd say that it is a waste to have 2 slots into the affinities, but if I had to choose one, and this is just my personal opinion because of the kind of combos that you can do, is the ice affinity. The ice affinity is my favorite. More often than not, you're always going to have like, let's say, watery terrain around the battlefield. There's always rivers, lakes, shores. There's sometimes raining, and there's always water. And if you don't have like sources of water, you can have an archer on your crew that has water arrows. And what this thing does, and why it's so much my favorite, is that every time that you deal damage with a cold affinity weapon, you're going to be stun locking the hell out of the enemies forever, like quite literally forever. It just takes for the enemy to be a little bit wet, and then you add that little ice, and it just turns into a fest of not allowing them to move at all. So I'd say that my favorite out of all of this is ice affinity. But if you want to use fire affinity, you want to use lightning affinity, then that's completely fine. It's just that me personally, my favorite, I find it to be the ice affinity. Now we have Halidom. Halidom is kind of a niche thing as well. This thing is going to cure debilitations, debuffs on your crew, and I mean, I wouldn't say that it is that much of a niche. I'd say that this is one of the skills that you do want to have, because you're going to get frozen a lot, you're going to get torched a lot, you're going to get drenched, or silenced, or unconscious, or frostbitten, blighted, poisoned. Everything is going to have a kind, like, if I'm being honest, like 80% of the monsters right here are going to inflict you into some kind of debuff. Having the chance of getting rid of that debuff without having to carry curatives, because curatives are not as easy to obtain in here as they were in Dragon's Dogma 1. You do have to use the combination system, you have to have the proper materials, probably your materials are rotted or they are dry and you cannot use them anymore, so it's kind of a pain in the ass that can be solved by this thing right here, which is one of my favorites. And then we have high celerity. This thing is going to make you faster. The entirety of the crew, everyone is going to be faster. Now, the cool thing about this thing is that it potentializes by double your DPS as well, because you're always going to be attacking faster. If you're using skills that require reaction from the thief, for example, to enter into the veil of that little thing that starts, I just forgot about the name of the skill, but when you start dodging everything, or when you do perfect parries, or when you do the vendetta parries from the fighter, or when you're doing like regular parries from the warrior, this makes it easier because it makes those windows that much more easier to accomplish. If you're charging up a high stamina like the heavenly shot from the archer, it is going to charge it even faster. So if you're casting spells from the sorcerer, which are just tremendously highly damaging, but it takes like 54 years to conjure them, then this is going to make everything faster, including the mage in here. And some of the spells that we're going to be using with the spells are actually going to be quite amazing with the mage. So I can't stress enough how important it is for you to have high celerity at all times. Now, Argent Sukuku, that's thing. This is just healing, and I find it irrelevant. Yes, it will heal you instantly, like quite literally it heals you instantly, but not only that, it's going to continue healing you for quite a bit of time. So it's kind of nice, but remember that the mage already has a healing, that it's a core ability, a core skill, and it's actually quite nice. It's just that you have to walk towards it. Then again, the damage that the enemies deal on Dragon's Dogma is not as something like an urgency that you have to take care immediately. As a matter of fact, you can be just running around the battlefield with lots and lots of damage and not care about it that much. Sure, sometimes when you're not careful, it is going to save your life. But if you're minding the battlefield, you know where you are, you know where you're standing. The mage is always going to be using the core skill healing, so I can't see how would you be wasting one of these skills where you can be placing like an affinity or the celerity or the palladium, things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice. Now, the most important of them all, and I'd say that the one that you should never, ever, ever be hiring a pawn if they don't have this thing. I'd say that, well, this is the maester skill, so you do have the arisen that is building this mage has to do the mage maester quest line to get this thing. But what this thing does is that it immediately gives you an infinite amount of stamina. Now, why is this so important? Well, more than anything, most of the entirety of the roster of the maester skills for the rest of the vocations are very high consuming in stamina. And as a matter of fact, this is a very stamina heavy driven game, where if you want to be spamming your skills, you're going to be using quite a bit of stamina. This is not only going to give you stamina, but it's also going to give you defense, right? So the defense is kind of a side little something, but if you put this thing into consideration, you can do just filthy amazing things thanks to this combo right here that is only accomplished if you have a mage in your crew. So for example, the Mystic Spearhand. The Mystic Spearhand, the Maester skill, which is the wisp, that little thing where he starts like attacking like a maniac. It deals a decent bit of damage, but it doesn't deal as much damage because it drains your stamina in just like 3 taps. So it's kind of irrelevant, or it's kind of useless. But if you have this thing, you can be spamming it and you become a laser beam because of how much damage you can be dishing out without having to care about the stamina. Or for example, think about the Thief. The Thief, when you use the Maester skill where you cannot be damaged so long as you have stamina, then you can be spamming Hell Splitters and Hell Splitters and Hell Splitters without having to worry about being interrupted, because you're always going to have the invincibility iframes because you're never running out of stamina because of the celestial paean right here. Or for example, the heavenly shot from the archer. The heavenly shot from the archer requires for you to charge an insane amount of stamina, and then you immediately are there without stamina. Then because of celestial pawn, you don't this thing, you don't really have to be caring about that, and you're always going to be dealing the maximum amount of damage of that skill without having to care whether if I have the stamina or not. The onslaught from the fighter, it requires quite a whole bunch of stamina. The final skill from the warrior, all of the skills that you're going to be using to deal as much damage as possible, they are going to require infinite amount of stamina, and this makes everyone so much more powerful because of that. Now sometimes you are going to have to be changing your mage because of the level, because you leveled up a little bit more, because you want to have like better skills or better things. You also have to have in mind the augments right here. But ideally, what I like to have on my mages is going to be one affinity. Right here, I should better like to have a cold affinity, but if I have the lightning, and that's quite nice. Then we have the high celerity that gets the DPS right there, which is quite amazing. Then we have the celestial paean right here, which then again, it's more DPS. The only thing that I would change for a mage, and then again, like I said, this is going to be purely based on my desires and my playstyle. Like I said, I consider Argent Support based on my level right now, since I have the most powerful armor on the game, so I don't really care about damage that much. I would very much like to have Halidam in here, or the Phalanx, for example. Something a little bit better, like if I had the Halidam right here, I wouldn't have to be worrying about getting interrupted with, for example, not interrupted, poisoned, which is very much annoying, or for example, getting a torch, which is very much annoying as well, or getting frozen. The harpies are very much annoying because they are always freezing you. So I would personally say that my perfect selection would be Cold Affinity, High Celerity, Halidam, and Celestial Paean. But if you have a combo as amazing as this one right here, then you're all set. You don't need anything else. Anyways, if you like content like never, super appreciate it. And also you today, you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Have a lovely, lovely day, and goodbye.